There comes a time when your breaking point becomes your birthing point. You've been crushed, but not canceled. You've been delayed, but not denied. Because what looked like waiting was really warfare. Every tear you cried was watering your next level. Every door that slammed in your face was pushing you closer to destiny. You didn't go through all that pain for nothing. God was training you in private for a victory that's about to go public. You've been walking through the valley, but now God is calling you to the mountain. You've been surviving on endurance, but now you're stepping into ELVIO. This is not the season to break down. It's the season to break through, because the same fire that tried to consume you is the same fire that's going to promote you. Endurance births elevation. Those three words carry the weight of every trial, every tear, and every late night prayer that felt like it went unanswered. Endurance is the seed that grows beneath the soil of struggle, unseen, uncelebrated, and often misunderstood. It's what stands when everything else has fallen. It's what keeps moving when every reason to stop is screaming in your ear. And it's what heaven uses to qualify you for the places you prayed for but weren't yet prepared to handle. You see, everybody wants elevation. Everybody wants to be lifted. We want to rise, to soar, to stand on the mountain. But no one wants the climb. No one wants the pressure of endurance. The grind, the waiting, the tears, the lonely nights when you wonder if you heard God right. Yet that's the very place where elevation begins. Because before God ever takes you up, He takes you through. Before He opens the door, He strengthens your hands to handle what's behind it. Elevation without endurance is dangerous. It's like building a skyscraper with a shallow foundation. It might look impressive, but one strong wind will expose the weakness beneath. That's why God lets you sit in seasons that stretch you, where you can't rush the process. You may feel like you're going in circles, but you're actually going deeper. Every challenge, every rejection, every delay is God saying, hold on. I'm anchoring you so that when I lift you, you won't fall. Endurance doesn't always look powerful. Sometimes it looks like tears on a pillow. Sometimes it looks like showing up even when you don't feel like it. Sometimes it looks like standing in faith when nothing in your life seems to agree with what God promised. But that quiet strength, that decision to stay, that's where power is born. Heaven takes note of people who refuse to quit. The enemy throws everything at you, but endurance says, still, I will stand. When you look through Scripture, elevation always follows endurance. Joseph had to endure the pit, the prison, and betrayal before he was elevated to the palace. David had to endure the wilderness before he wore the crown. Even Jesus endured the cross before he took his seat at the right hand of the Father. Every promise in the Bible is connected to patience, every breakthrough to a battle, every elevation to endurance. God doesn't hand out crowns to people who quit halfway up the mountain. Endurance changes your character. It breaks your dependence on comfort. It purifies your motives. When you've been through the storm and survived, you come out with perspective. You stop chasing approval because endurance taught you to trust God in silence. You stop fearing loss because you've already learned that what you lost wasn't necessary for where you're going. You stop panicking in waiting seasons because you know God's timing is always perfect. Endurance matures your faith, not in what you see, but in who you know God to be. Sometimes endurance is not about waiting nights for something, but about becoming something while you wait. God is not just preparing a blessing for you. He's preparing you for the blessing. If you get there too soon, it might crush you. But once endurance does its work, you'll have the strength to stay where God is taking you. The doors that used to intimidate you will no longer scare you because endurance taught you how to stand firm. There are people who can't see what God is doing in your life right now, and that's okay. Endurance doesn't make headlines. It's not flashy. But when the season shifts and elevation comes, those same people will wonder how you rose so suddenly, not realizing that it wasn't sudden at all. It was built in secret, in the quiet consistency of someone who refused to give up. God honors endurance because it mirrors His own nature. The same God who endured rejection, betrayal, and the weight of the cross now empowers you to endure your own trials. He never promised that the road would be easy, but He did promise that you'd never walk it alone. When you feel weak, remember that endurance isn't about your strength. It's about your willingness to keep moving in His. Endurance births elevation because the process shapes you into the person capable of holding what's coming. It strips away pride, fear, and impatience. It replaces haste with humility, doubt with dependence, and weakness with wisdom. You begin to understand that success without suffering doesn't last, but success built on endurance stands forever. Every no that hurt you was really God protecting your yays. Every delay that frustrated you was God aligning your destiny. Every time you thought you were being buried, you were actually being planted. The soil of endurance feels heavy, but it's fertile ground for greatness. And when the time is right, what was growing in the dark will break through the surface into the light, strong, stable, and ready to soar. If you are in a season that feels endless, don't despise it. Don't assume God forgot you. You're in training for elevation. The pressure is not punishment. It's proof that something greater is coming. Keep standing. Keep believing. Keep enduring. Because when the waiting season ends, it will end suddenly. What took years to prepare for will shift in a moment. When elevation comes, you'll look back and thank God for every closed door, every delay, every disappointment. You'll realize that what once broke your heart built your backbone. What once made you cry now makes you grateful. Because the same endurance that hurt you is the endurance that lifted you. So stand firm, child of God. Don't quit before your breakthrough. You've endured long enough, and heaven is whispering, now it's time. The pain you survived was not the end of your story. It was the preparation for your rise. You're about to step into what you've been praying for, because endurance doesn't just survive the storm. It gives birth to the sunrise. Delay is not denial. Those 4 words have carried countless believers through their darkest nights and longest waits. When it feels like God is silent, when doors don't open, when prayers seem unanswered, we start to wonder if heaven forgot our name. But what looks like a delay in your eyes is often divine timing in God's hands. The pause is not punishment, it's preparation. The waiting is not wasted, it's working for your good. You see, delay and denial may look the same on the surface, but they have completely different purposes. Denial means no, delay means not yet, and between no and not yet, there's a world of difference. When God denies, it's because something is not meant for you. When He delays, it's because something is not ready for you, or you are not ready for it. The blessing may already exist, but God will not let it arrive until you have the strength, wisdom, and humility to hold it. Many people lose faith in the delay because they mistake silence for absence. They assume that when God isn't speaking, He isn't working. But faith isn't proven when everything makes sense. It's proven when nothing makes sense, and you still believe. Faith thrives in the delay because that's where trust is tested. Can you still worship when you can't see the way forward? Can you still believe when the timeline you built is crumbling? That's where maturity is born, in the tension between expectation and manifestation. Delay is the classroom where destiny is taught. Think of Joseph. He had a dream of greatness, of elevation, of leadership. But before the palace, he faced the pit and the prison. What looked like delay was actually divine direction. Each stop on the journey was shaping his character. If Joseph had gone from the dream straight to the throne, pride would have destroyed what purpose wanted to preserve. But the delay purified his motives. It made him ready for influence. David was anointed as king while still a shepherd. He had the oil, but not yet the opportunity. God delayed his coronation because there were still giants to slay, still lessons to learn in obscurity. The delay was not God's rejection. It was God's protection. If David had stepped into the palace before enduring the wilderness, he wouldn't have known how to fight, how to lead, or how to lean fully on God's strength instead of his own. The delay taught him dependence. Even Jesus experienced delay. When Mary and Martha sent word that Lazarus was sick, Scripture says Jesus intentionally stayed where he was 2 more days. He delayed his arrival, not because he didn't care, but because he wanted to reveal a greater glory. If he had come earlier, they would have known him as a healer. But through the delay, they discovered him as the resurrection and the life. Sometimes God delays what you want so he can show you who he is. Delay develops what comfort can't. It refines your patience, deepens your prayer life, and breaks your attachment to instant gratification. In a world that worships speed, God still moves at the pace of purpose. He's never in a hurry, but he's never late. He doesn't operate by your calendar. He operates by his covenant. Every second of the wait is intentional. Every closed door, every unanswered prayer, every moment of frustration is part of a divine timeline. The enemy loves to whisper during the delay. He'll tell you, God forgot you, it's over. You missed your moment. But you must silence those lies with truth. God never forgets his promises. If he said it, he'll do it. If he spoke it, he'll bring it to pass. The same God who began the good work in you is faithful to complete it, not on your schedule, but on his. Sometimes the delay is God saying, I'm aligning everything so that when the door opens, it stays open. When you rush what God is still writing, you end up breaking what he was building. The delay is not meant to destroy your faith. It's meant to deepen it. It's teaching you to rely on God's pace, not your pressure. Because when he finally moves, it will make sense why he didn't move sooner. You'll realize that every not yet was protecting you from something premature. What you thought was rejection was actually redirection. If God had answered every prayer when you asked, some of those answers would have hurt you. You weren't ready then. The relationships you wanted, the platforms you prayed for, the opportunities you thought were perfect, they would have crushed you because your roots weren't deep enough. But now, after the delay, you've grown stronger. You've learned to depend on his presence more than his promises. That's the power of delay. It shifts your focus from what you're waiting for to who you're waiting with. There's beauty in divine delay, because when the blessing finally comes, it carries a different weight. You value it more because you fought for it prayed for it, cried for it. The delay gives depth to your gratitude. It gives meaning to your miracle. You stop taking grace for granted because you remember what it cost to get here. When God finally releases what He promised, it will be worth every moment of waiting. It will be so complete, so undeniable, that you'll realize He was never late. He was building something eternal. The marriage that took years to restore, the dream that took decades to manifest, the healing that seemed delayed. When it happens, you'll see it was right on time. Delay is not denial. It's destiny on divine schedule. So don't panic in the pause. Don't let frustration make you walk away from your faith. Keep sowing. Keep believing. Keep showing up. Because when the appointed time comes, the door will open, the favor will flow, and the blessing will fit perfectly. The God who paused you is the same God who will propel you. The same delay that felt like a setback is actually setting the stage for a comeback. You may not understand the timing, but trust the author. His story is better than your script, and when He finally turns the page, you'll realize every moment of waiting was worth it. The delay was never denial. It was divine design. Hidden seasons prepare public victories. Those who have ever walked through a hidden season know how lonely it can feel. The silence, the stillness, the invisibility. You're doing everything right, yet no one seems to notice. You're sowing seeds, but the soil looks dry. You're serving faithfully, but nothing seems to move. It's as if heaven has turned the lights off and told you to keep walking in the dark. But what looks like hiding is not rejection, it's refinement. God hides you before He highlights you. Every great victory that becomes visible to the world is first forged in the invisible. Before anyone saw David slay Goliath, he had already learned how to fight lions and bears in secret. Before Joseph ruled in Egypt, he learned integrity in Potiphar's house and endurance in prison. Before Esther stepped into the palace, she learned obedience and courage in obscurity. The hidden place is not punishment, it's preparation. It's where God shapes your heart, sharpens your character, and solidifies your foundation before He lets the world see your fruit. We live in a generation that fears obscurity. We crave attention, validation, and applause. But God's greatest work is often done in silence, far away from the spotlight. The hidden season strips away pride and trains you to hear His voice above the noise of people's opinions. When God hides you, He's not withholding the stage. He's protecting your soul. Because if you rise before you're ready, what's meant to bless you can break you. Elevation without preparation leads to destruction. Hidden seasons are where the real growth happens. Think of a seed. Once planted, it disappears beneath the soil. No one claps for it. No one celebrates it. It's covered, buried, unseen. But under the surface, something powerful is taking place. Roots are forming. Structure is strengthening. Depth is being built. If the seed were dug up too soon, it would never survive the exposure. The darkness that seems to bury it is actually the womb of transformation. In the same way, God buries you for a season so that when you finally sprout, you have roots deep enough to sustain what He's about to bring forth. Hidden seasons test your motives. Are you doing it for recognition or for obedience? Are you faithful only when others are watching or when no one sees? God uses those quiet, unseen moments to purify your purpose. When you learn to serve without applause, to give without credit, and to obey without acknowledgement, you prove that your heart is ready for stewardship. God doesn't elevate performers. He elevates servants. And it's in the hidden place that servanthood is perfected. The hidden season also reveals what truly drives you. Many people can perform under the spotlight, but it takes integrity to be excellent in private. When no one is there to applaud you, will you still show up? When no one notices your faithfulness, will you still give your best? That's the test that separates those who want fame from those who want fruit. God doesn't anoint people who crave attention. He anoints those who crave His approval. There's something sacred about being hidden. It's a cocoon season, a place of metamorphosis. What looks like isolation is actually incubation. God is downloading wisdom, vision, and endurance into your spirit. He's building in you the maturity you'll need to carry the weight of public influence. Because make no mistake, visibility attracts both victory and warfare. If your roots aren't deep enough, the pressure will crush you. That's why God often delays the unveiling until you're ready to handle both the blessing and the battle. When God hides you, He also shields you. Some of the opportunities you thought you missed were actually traps He protected you from. Some relationships that walked away were assignments that would have drained you. Some doors that didn't open were detours that saved you from collapse. The hidden place may feel restrictive, but it's a hedge of divine safety. You're not forgotten, you're being fortified. It's in hidden seasons that your private prayers become powerful. You learn to depend on God in ways you never did before. You start to realize that success isn't about being seen. It's about being sent. The world celebrates exposure, but heaven celebrates endurance. When you're hidden, you learn to value presence over platform, purpose over popularity. And when your season of unveiling comes, you won't crumble under the weight of the crowd's opinion, because your confidence will be rooted in the quiet strength of the one who sustained you in secret. If you're in a season where it feels like no one sees you, don't despise it. God does His best work behind the scenes. When a master builder is constructing a foundation, the most important work is done underground. No one applauds the concrete, yet everything else depends on it. Your hidden season is your foundation. What God builds in private will hold what He reveals in public. Don't rush the process. Every unseen effort, every unnoticed act of obedience, every quiet prayer, they're all laying the groundwork for your next level. The truth is, there is no public victory without private preparation. What you practice in secret determines what you perform in public. Jesus spent 30 years in obscurity before stepping into 3 years of ministry that changed the world. 30 years hidden, 3 years revealed. That ratio alone tells us how vital hidden seasons are to destiny. God will never waste a moment of your preparation. When the time is right, He will pull back the curtain, and what He unveils will carry eternal impact. So don't curse your hidden season. Cherish it. It's the birthplace of strength, wisdom, and resilience. You may not see the results yet, but heaven is watching your consistency. And one day, the same people who overlooked you will wonder how you rose so high, so fast. They'll see the glory but never know the story. They'll see the victory but never understand the valley. But you'll know. You'll know it was in the hidden place that God built you, shaped you, and proved you. Hidden seasons prepare public victories. When God finally reveals you, it won't be premature. It won't be fragile. It will be powerful, purposeful, and permanent. Because you weren't just waiting, you were being made. The silence wasn't abandonment, it was strategy. And when your time comes, you'll realize that the hidden season wasn't holding you back. It was launching you forward. Faith grows in the waiting room. That's the space between what God promised and what you can see. It's where your prayers hang in midair and heaven seems quiet. It's where you learn that believing isn't about feelings and trust isn't about timing. The waiting room is where you discover who God really is, not just when He provides, but when He pauses. It's a place that stretches your soul and teaches your heart that delay is not defeat. When you first step into the waiting room, you often think it will be temporary. You assume the answer is right around the corner. Days turn to weeks, weeks to months, and sometimes years go by. You start to question, did I hear God right? Did I do something wrong? Why hasn't it happened yet? But the waiting room is not a punishment. It's a process. It's where faith matures from excitement to endurance, from shallow hope to unshakable trust. God doesn't test your faith to break it. He tests it to build it. In the waiting room, faith stops being a word you say and becomes a lifestyle you live. You stop leaning on emotions and start standing on promises. When you can't trace God's hand, you learn to trust His heart. When the evidence doesn't match the expectation, you learn to walk by faith and not by sight. That's where real growth happens. It's easy to praise when doors open, but can you still praise when nothing moves? Can you still worship when you don't see the breakthrough yet? That's what separates shallow faith from steadfast faith. The waiting room is not silent to God. While you're wondering, He's working. While you're questioning, He's orchestrating. The delay is often God aligning everything behind the scenes so that when the blessing arrives, it fits perfectly. If He gave it to you too soon, it would fall apart under pressure. But in the waiting room, He's strengthening you to handle what you've been praying for. He's developing patience, humility, gratitude, and resilience. Faith that grows in waiting is faith that can withstand the weight of destiny. Every person God ever used went through a waiting room. Abraham waited decades for a promised son. Moses waited 40 years in the wilderness before leading Israel out of Egypt. Joseph waited through betrayal and imprisonment before stepping into leadership. Even Jesus waited 30 years before revealing His ministry. Waiting doesn't mean God forgot you. It means He's preparing the stage for your moment. If you rush the process, you forfeit the depth that waiting produces. In the waiting room, God often removes distractions. He allows certain people to walk away, certain opportunities to close, certain plans to crumble. It's not to hurt you, but to isolate your focus. When you have nothing left to depend on but Him, your faith becomes pure. It's in those seasons when you stop saying, God, and start saying, God, do it in me. You begin to realize that faith is not just about getting something from God, but about becoming someone through God. The waiting room also reveals your posture. Some wait with bitterness, others with belief. Some sit in frustration, others stand in faith. You can't always control how long you wait, but you can control how you wait. Waiting in faith doesn't mean pretending everything is fine. It means choosing to trust even when it's not. It's saying, God, even if it takes longer than I thought, I'll still serve you. I'll still praise you. I'll still believe. That kind of faith shakes hell. It tells the enemy that your trust is not for sale. Sometimes God uses waiting to detox your heart from the need for control. You learn that His ways are higher, His thoughts deeper, and His plan greater. What you think is a delay is often divine pacing. God knows that if He gave you everything you asked for at once, it might overwhelm you. So He gives you little by little, layer by layer, teaching you to depend on His grace one step at a time. Faith isn't proven by how fast you receive. It's proven by how long you can believe. The waiting room is also where intimacy with God deepens. When answers are absent, presence becomes everything. You stop chasing outcomes and start cherishing encounters. You find peace in prayer, strength in Scripture, and comfort in quiet moments. The same waiting room that once felt like a prison becomes a sanctuary. You realize that what you really needed was not the thing you were waiting for. It was the one you were waiting with. When your season of waiting finally ends, you'll see that every tear, every prayer, and every moment of silence had a purpose. You'll look back and realize that faith was growing the whole time. In the struggle, in the stillness, in the space between promise and performance. You'll see how the waiting made you wiser, humbler, and stronger. What once felt like a delay will now feel like divine strategy. God was never late. He was making sure everything was ready, including you. Faith that grows in the waiting room becomes unshakable. It stops depending on outcomes and starts depending on the character of God. It learns that sometimes the miracle is not in what you receive, but in who you become while you wait. That's why Scripture says, "They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength." Waiting doesn't weaken you. It renews you. It transforms impatience into perseverance and doubt into determination. If you're in a waiting season right now, don't lose heart. The silence is not God's absence. It's His strategy. Keep believing, even when you don't feel anything changing. Keep walking, even when the path isn't clear. Keep trusting, even when the timing feels off. Because every moment in the waiting room is working something inside of you that will last far beyond the blessing. When the door finally opens, you won't just walk into a new opportunity. You'll walk in as a new person. The faith you grew in the waiting will sustain you in the winning. You'll no longer be shaken by delays or detours because you've learned that God's timing is flawless. So rest, breathe, and keep the faith. The waiting room may be where you are, but it's not where you'll stay. Faith is growing, heaven is moving, and your appointed time is on the way. Is shifting you from surviving to winning. That's not just a statement. It's a prophetic transition. For too long, you've been in a season where your only goal was to make it through the day. You've been in survival mode, holding your breath through storms, standing in faith through tears, and trying to stay afloat when life kept throwing waves your way. But the God who sustained you in survival is now positioning you for victory. You didn't endure all that pain to stay where you are. The same God who kept you alive is now about to help you thrive. Survival mode is a real place. It's when you wake up every morning just trying to keep your mind together, your faith alive, and your spirit strong. It's when you have to push yourself to pray, even when your heart feels heavy. It's when your only goal is not to lose your grip. But survival is not your destiny. It's your doorway. It was never meant to be permanent. It was meant to prepare you. Surviving was proof that you could withstand the storm, but winning is proof that the storm couldn't stop you. When you were surviving, you learned how to depend on God for your next breath, your next step, your next miracle. You learned that your own strength wasn't enough, that your wisdom had limits, and that your control was an illusion. You had to lean into grace just to keep going. And that's exactly why you're ready for winning. Because now you know what it means to rely on God and not yourself. Winning isn't just about success, it's about strength built in surrender. The shift from surviving to winning often starts in silence. God begins to move things you can't see. The pressure starts to lift, but you don't even notice it at first. Old battles lose their grip, and the very things that used to break you no longer hold power. It's not always an instant turnaround. Sometimes it's a subtle change in your mindset. You stop saying, "I hope I make it," and start saying, "I was made for this." That's when you know the shift has begun. Surviving teaches you endurance, but winning demands expectation. You can't win if you keep expecting defeat. You can't rise if you keep thinking like someone who's still trying to escape the fire. God doesn't just want you to survive, He wants you to own your victory. The same mouth that cried in pain must now speak in faith. You have to change your language. Stop saying, "I'm barely making it," and start declaring, "I'm stepping into overflow." Your mindset is the bridge between the wilderness and the promise. Many of us get comfortable in survival because it's familiar. We don't expect too much. We just don't want to be hurt again. But God didn't bring you this far for you to settle for just enough. He's a God of abundance, not scarcity. The manna that sustained you in the desert was never meant to be permanent. There's milk and honey waiting on the other side of obedience. But to step into that, you must let go of the identity that formed in the struggle. You are not a victim of your past. You are a victor through Christ. When God shifts you into winning, He doesn't just change your circumstances. He changes you. He rewires your faith, renews your vision, and reignites your purpose. You start to see yourself differently. You start to realize that everything that tried to destroy you is actually training you. The heartbreak, the loss, the betrayal, the loneliness, all of it built the resilience you need for your next season. Survival was your classroom, but winning is your graduation. The shift also requires new discipline. Winners don't think like survivors. Survivors react, winners prepare. Survivors hope to avoid the storm, winners learn to command the wind. In survival mode, you prayed for escape. In winning mode, you pray for strategy. God is not just giving you breakthroughs. He's giving you blueprints. You're moving from waiting for miracles to walking in mastery. That's the difference between surviving by grace and winning through growth. Even the way you handle people will change. In your survival season, you tolerated chaos because you were too tired to fight. But when you shift into winning, you start protecting your peace. You stop chasing what drains you and start nurturing what feeds you. You recognize that not everyone can go with you where you're headed. Winning requires separation. You can't carry old weight into new seasons. God will remove distractions, not to isolate you, but to accelerate you. When God moves you from surviving to winning, it's not about material success. It's about spiritual authority. You become someone who walks in power because you've proven you can be trusted with pressure. You no longer crumble under adversity because you've already survived worse. You walk differently. You speak differently. You move with purpose. You don't beg for blessings. You command them with confidence in the one who called you. There comes a moment when you realize that everything you went through was working together for this very season. Every delay was direction. Every loss was lesson. Every tear was testimony. You begin to understand that you were never losing, you were learning. God didn't let you break down because He was building you up. And now that the foundation is strong, He's elevating you into places that match your preparation. Winning doesn't mean life gets easy. It means you face battles with a new strength. The same storms that used to knock you down now only prove how far you've come. You're not the same person who entered the fire. You've grown tougher, wiser, and more resilient. You don't just endure anymore, you overcome. You don't just survive anymore, you conquer. So if you feel a shift happening, don't resist it. God is pulling you out of the season of barely enough and pushing you into more than enough. He's removing the survival mentality and replacing it with a winning spirit. You've cried enough tears, fought enough battles, and waited long enough. This is your turning point. What used to drain you will now drive you. What used to scare you will now serve you. God is shifting you from surviving to winning, from hanging on by faith to walking in favor, from holding it together to holding the victory. The same grace that carried you through survival is the grace that will crown you in triumph. You made it through the valley, now it's time to claim the mountain. The storm didn't break you because it was never meant to. It built you. Now rise up, breathe deep, and walk into your winning season. You're not just surviving anymore. You're soaring. ChatGPT said, "You've walked through fire and come out refined. You've faced storms that should have drowned you, but you're still standing, stronger, wiser, and closer to God than ever before." Every tear, every test, every long night of waiting has been shaping you for this very moment. You didn't just endure to survive, you endured to elevate. God was never just trying to keep you alive. He was preparing to take you higher. Now the waiting season is over. The endurance was your training ground, but the elevation is your inheritance. You've been stretched, crushed, and pressed, but that pressure was producing oil, the anointing that distinguishes winners from survivors. What once broke you now builds you. What once hurt you now helps you. The pain that felt like punishment was actually preparation for your promotion. This is the moment where faith turns into fulfillment. You're stepping out of survival mode and into divine strategy. You're not just hoping for change. You are the change. The same God who held you through the wilderness is now guiding you into the promised land. You've outgrown the fear, the doubt, and the waiting. You've proven you can handle the fight. Now God is trusting you with the finish.